The elegant restaurant was bustling with activity as the dinner hour approached. The air was filled with the clinking of glasses and soft murmurs of conversations, but at one table, the world seemed to stand still. The table was positioned near a tall window, offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. There, amidst the extravagant decor and the quiet hum of the restaurant, sat Travis Carter, the billionaire CEO of Carter Enterprises. His dark hair was neatly styled, his sharp suit fitting perfectly over his lean frame. He was in the middle of an important business dinner with Jonathan Williams, a potential partner for his next big deal and acquisition that could transform the future of his company. Travis had built his fortune from the ground up, and his eyes gleamed with the kind of ambition only someone with his experience could possess. However, his current focus wasn't on his empire, but on securing this deal with Jonathan, a deal that could ensure his company's position as the industry leader for years to come. The waiter had placed their drinks in front of them and quietly left. A quiet hum of conversation floated through the air. The flickering candlelight seemed to illuminate the gravity of the moment. But Travis had been noticing Jonathan's tense demeanor, a man who rarely showed any sign of weakness. But tonight, his fingers were tapping nervously on the edge of his glass. There was something off, something Travis couldn't quite put his finger on. Emily Turner stood just a few steps away, her posture relaxed, but with a keen attention to detail as she moved between tables. She had been working at Le Petit Fleur, a high-end restaurant in the heart of downtown, for the past 3 years. A small-town girl, she had come to the city seeking a fresh start. She never imagined she would end up in a job like this, serving the city's elite, but it had paid the bills and given her a sense of stability. Still, Emily longed for more. But tonight wasn't about her dreams, it was about doing her job well. She glanced at the table where Travis and Jonathan sat. The conversation seemed to be getting intense, and she could see that Jonathan was growing agitated. She wondered if she should step in and offer assistance with the wine list, or perhaps check on their meals. But that wasn't her role, she was just there to serve. As the evening wore on, Emily kept her distance but remained observant. She had become accustomed to the mannerisms of the restaurant's high-profile patrons. The nuances of their actions, how they handled themselves, how they interacted with staff were subtle, yet important to her. She had learned over time that, observing these little things, gave her insights into how to do her job better, how to make their experience perfect. However, there was one moment that caught her attention. The business contract that Travis and Jonathan had been discussing was laid out in front of them, a digital tablet with figures and terms that neither of them appeared to fully understand. Jonathan was pushing for a faster deal closure, and Travis, always calculating, was asking for more time to review the details. Emily was passing by their table when her eyes accidentally caught a glimpse of the screen. It was just a quick glance, but something stood out to her. The numbers didn't add up. The way the figures were presented seemed off an error, perhaps, or something more deliberate. She wasn't sure, but it nagged at her. She had worked in the restaurant long enough to know when something was amiss, and this was a feeling she couldn't shake. As she walked back toward the kitchen, her thoughts raced. Could she say something? Should she speak up? She was just a waitress after all. It wasn't her place to intervene in something as serious as a business deal, but the figures on that tablet lingered in her mind. The stakes were high, she could see that from the tension in the air. Her shift was almost over, but Emily knew that she wouldn't be able to walk away from this. She had to know if she had seen what she thought she had. As the evening wore on, Emily's mind remained fixed on that tablet, on the numbers that didn't seem to make sense. She found herself standing by the side of the kitchen door, watching as the two men continued to argue. Jonathan's voice was a low murmur, his words punctuated with impatience. Travis, however, remained calm, his demeanor one of someone who had seen it all before. Finally, Emily made up her mind. She wasn't going to let this go. She had no idea what the consequences might be, but she had to say something. Taking a deep breath, she approached the table again. Travis glanced up, his expression unreadable. "Excuse me, Mr. Carter," Emily began, her voice trembling slightly. She could feel the weight of the moment, the intensity of the situation. I couldn't help but notice something. It's about the figures in the contract. There's something that doesn't seem quite right." Travis raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. He was about to dismiss her when Jonathan cut in, clearly annoyed. "Emily, isn't it?" Jonathan asked, clearly irritated. "What makes you think you know anything about this?" But Emily didn't back down. She continued, "I've been working here for a long time, sir, and I've seen many contracts come through the restaurant. The figures on that tablet, they don't add up. They're off by a significant margin." There was a tense silence. Travis, now fully engaged, stood up from the table and looked at Emily with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. "What exactly are you suggesting, Miss Turner?" he asked. She felt a sudden wave of nerves, but she stood her ground. "I'm not an expert, but from what I could see, there's a discrepancy in the contract, something that could result in a huge financial loss. I'm not sure if it's an error or if someone is trying to pull a fast one, but I thought it was important enough to mention." Travis stared at her for a long moment. He could easily dismiss her, she was just a waitress after all, but something about her unwavering stance caught his attention. "Let's take a look," Travis said, motioning for her to come closer. Jonathan looked less than thrilled, but Travis was already focused on Emily. He had a gut feeling she was right. The moments that followed were a whirlwind. Emily stood nervously beside Travis as he pulled up the document on his tablet. She pointed to the figures, showing him exactly where the discrepancy lay. Travis's expression shifted from one of curiosity to disbelief as he reviewed the numbers. "You're right," he finally said. It's a mistake. An expensive mistake." Jonathan's face turned white as he realized the magnitude of the error. "That can't be true," he muttered, trying to regain control of the situation. "It's just a small detail. It won't make a difference." But Travis was no longer listening to him. He was focused entirely on Emily, the woman who had saved his company millions. "Thank you," Travis said, his voice soft but genuine. "You've just saved me from making one of the biggest financial mistakes of my career. I owe you more than just a tip." Emily stood there, stunned. She hadn't expected any recognition, just the satisfaction of knowing she had done the right thing. But now, she found herself at the center of a much bigger moment than she ever imagined. The evening ended with a sense of quiet resolution. Jonathan's deal was put on hold, and the financial crisis had been averted. Emily, still in shock, returned to her duties, but everything had changed. She didn't expect any special treatment, she was just doing her job, after all. But when Travis stood up to leave, he turned to her one last time. "Emily," he said, his voice calm but filled with a certain intensity, "how would you like to join me at Carter Enterprises? I could use someone like you, someone who doesn't let the details slip by." The offer took Emily by surprise, but it was an offer she couldn't refuse. In a single moment, she had gone from being a waitress to an integral part of a billionaire's empire. Emily had always considered herself an ordinary person. She was never someone who craved the spotlight or sought attention. And yet, here she was, at the center of an unexpected turn of events. After saving a billionaire's company from a potentially catastrophic mistake, Emily couldn't quite wrap her mind around what had just happened. As she walked back to the kitchen to complete her duties, her thoughts were a whirlwind. Her shift was almost over, but she felt as though her world had just been flipped upside down. In a place where the only thing that mattered was good service, and even better tips, she had done something much bigger than either of those things. "I've just saved him millions," she thought, the weight of it sinking in. She had done the right thing, but now the consequences were unfolding. Emily wasn't sure how to feel. Was she proud of herself? Terrified? Or maybe just overwhelmed by the sudden attention that seemed to be swirling around her. But the reality was much more complicated than she had expected. The next day, Emily found herself back at Le Petit Fleur, but everything felt different. The staff seemed to treat her with newfound respect, whispering behind her back as if she had somehow become an overnight celebrity. But the real change came from her interactions with Travis. The billionaire had called the restaurant earlier that morning, asking to speak with her directly. The call left her feeling uneasy. She had never expected to be on a first-name basis with someone like Travis Carter. When she answered her phone, Travis's deep, confident voice greeted her. "Emily, I trust you've had a good night's sleep after saving my company?" he began, his tone playful but still filled with gratitude. "I didn't think it was that big of a deal," she replied, trying to brush off the praise. "I just noticed something that didn't seem right." "Well, whatever it was, you saved us," he said. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said last night, and I think it's time we talked about your future." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had expected a polite thank you, maybe a tip, but this was something else. "What do you mean?" she asked, the unease creeping into her voice. "I want to offer you a position at Carter Enterprises," he continued. "I'm not sure exactly what role would suit you yet, but I want you on my team. You have an eye for detail, something that's rare in this world. I could use that. We could use that." Emily's mind spun. She wasn't sure what to say. She was a waitress, not someone who was qualified for a corporate position. She hadn't even finished college. But the offer was there, and Travis didn't seem to be joking. She had saved his company. Maybe he was serious about her joining his team. "I don't know if I'm the right person for that," Emily said, her voice faltering. "I mean, I've never worked in a corporate environment before." Travis chuckled. "That's exactly why I want you. You see things that others don't. And besides, we can teach you what you need to know. The question is, are you willing to take a chance?" Later that evening, after her shift ended, Emily found herself sitting on her small apartment balcony, looking out at the city lights. The cool night air did little to calm her racing thoughts. The offer from Travis lingered in her mind like a constant buzz. She had always dreamed of something more, something beyond the walls of the restaurant. But this was overwhelming. Could I really leave behind my life as a waitress? She thought of her mother back home in the small town, who had always told her to take chances, to go after her dreams. But how could she step into the world of high-powered executives and billion-dollar deals? She had no formal education in business or finance. She wasn't prepared for a role at a company like Carter Enterprises. But then, another thought crossed her mind. What if this was the chance she'd been waiting for? The days passed in a blur of confusion and contemplation. Emily wrestled with the idea of leaving the life she had known for something completely unknown. She spoke with a few trusted friends, but none of them could truly understand the magnitude of what was being offered to her. She felt like she was standing at a crossroads, with no clear path ahead. It wasn't until one quiet evening, after another long shift, that Emily found herself in front of a mirror, staring at her reflection. She had been avoiding this moment, the moment when she had to face the truth about what she wanted. The truth was, she wanted more. She had always wanted more. And now, for the first time, she had a chance to prove to herself that she could rise above her circumstances. The thought of working at Carter Enterprises terrified her, but the thought of staying in her current life, never knowing what might have been, terrified her even more. With a deep breath, Emily made her decision. She called Travis the next morning. "I'm in," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves twisting in her stomach. "I'll join Carter Enterprises." The first day at Carter Enterprises was nothing like Emily had imagined. The sleek glass building towered over her, and the polished floors gleamed beneath her feet as she walked through the lobby. She had barely stepped inside before a well-dressed assistant greeted her with a smile and led her to Travis's office. Travis stood up from his desk as she entered, offering a warm smile that immediately put her at ease. "I'm glad you could make it," he said. "Let's get to work." The day passed in a blur of introductions and meetings. Emily was assigned to the analytical team, working closely with the CFO to review contracts, audit financial statements, and assess potential investments. It was a steep learning curve, but Emily found herself adapting quickly. She had always been a quick learner, and her attention to detail, something that had been invaluable as a waitress, was proving to be a significant asset in the corporate world as well. Weeks turned into months, and Emily began to find her footing at Carter Enterprises. She was no longer the shy, uncertain waitress. She was a respected member of the team, trusted to handle sensitive tasks. Travis's faith in her had not been misplaced. He pushed her to take on more responsibility, and each time, she rose to the occasion. The once quiet girl from a small town was now the woman who had saved millions, and she was determined to prove that she was capable of much more than anyone had ever imagined. As the months passed, Emily began to settle into her new life at Carter Enterprises, but the weight of her responsibilities only grew heavier. What had initially seemed like an exciting opportunity quickly became a demanding and relentless journey. Every day brought new challenges, new tasks that tested her abilities, forcing her to stretch beyond her comfort zone. Travis had been pushing her to take on bigger roles within the company, and though Emily was grateful for his trust, the pressure was beginning to take its toll. The high-stakes world of business wasn't like the quiet efficiency she had been accustomed to at the restaurant. It was competitive, cutthroat, and there was always someone watching, waiting for her to slip. Despite her growing confidence in her skills, Emily began to feel the weight of doubt creeping in. She had been promoted to a senior analyst position, working directly with Travis's team, and she was handling tasks she never imagined herself doing just months ago. Reviewing contracts, preparing presentations, and managing high-level meetings, all of it was on her shoulders now. One evening, as she sat at her desk, staring at a stack of reports, the exhaustion started to catch up with her. She hadn't noticed how much time had passed, how late it was, until the office started emptying out. She glanced at the clock. 11:15 p.m. The building was nearly silent now, and Emily's head pounded as she rubbed her temples. "I can't keep up with this pace forever," she thought to herself. "What if I'm not cut out for this after all?" As Emily sat in the near darkness of the office, the weight of everything she had accomplished seemed to blur. She had worked so hard to prove herself, to show that she belonged at Carter Enterprises, that she hadn't realized how much she had sacrificed. The long hours, the missed weekends, the constant pressure to perform, it had become all-consuming. She had become a stranger to herself, no longer sure of who she was beyond her role in the company. She heard footsteps approaching from the hallway, and her heart skipped a beat. It was Travis. "Still working late?" he asked, his voice warm but tinged with concern. He stood in the doorway, looking at her with a mix of curiosity and empathy. "You've been burning the candle at both ends lately." Emily straightened up in her chair, trying to hide her exhaustion with a forced smile. "Just trying to get everything in order," she replied, though the words felt hollow as she said them. Travis crossed the room and stood beside her desk, his eyes scanning the pile of reports and spreadsheets in front of her. "You're doing great work, Emily, but I can see how hard you're pushing yourself. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. We all see what you're capable of." Emily swallowed, trying to hold back the wave of emotions that threatened to spill over. "Why is it so hard to admit I'm struggling?" she wondered. She wanted to be strong, to appear confident, to live up to the expectations she had set for herself. But in that moment, she couldn't hold it in any longer. "I'm trying so hard," she said, her voice catching. "But I don't know if I can keep up with this. I'm not sure I'm cut out for this job. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning." Travis didn't say anything at first. He simply stood there, watching her, as if weighing the situation. And then, with surprising tenderness, he spoke. "Emily, nobody expects you to do everything alone. You've come a long way in a short time, and you've earned every bit of success you have. But that doesn't mean you have to shoulder all of it by yourself. You can lean on the team. You don't have to be perfect." The words hit Emily harder than she expected. She realized, for the first time since joining Carter Enterprises, that she didn't have to carry the weight of her new life all on her own. For so long, she had been so focused on proving her worth that she had forgotten to take care of herself. She had been afraid of showing vulnerability, afraid of revealing any cracks in the facade she had carefully built. For a moment, she just sat there, allowing the relief to wash over her. The pressure, the constant tension, felt a little lighter. "Thank you, Travis," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Travis gave her a small smile. "You're welcome. You're a valuable member of this company, Emily. Never forget that." The conversation with Travis lingered in Emily's mind for the next few days. She found herself reflecting on her journey and how much she had sacrificed to get to where she was. She had come from a small town with no formal education in business, but she had worked her way up with determination and grit. And while she was proud of her accomplishments, she realized that her definition of success had been narrow. She had been focused on the wrong things: achievement, status, recognition at the expense of her own well-being. As she sat in her small apartment that weekend, Emily made a decision. She would start taking care of herself, not just professionally, but personally as well. She would take weekends off, allow herself time to relax, and reconnect with the things that brought her joy. She needed balance in her life, and it was time to rediscover what really mattered. Her first step was to call her mother. She hadn't spoken to her much since starting at Carter Enterprises, and the distance between them had begun to feel like an aching gap. She missed the comfort of her mother's voice, the simplicity of life back home. When her mother picked up, Emily smiled. "Hi, Mom," she said. "It's been too long." They talked for hours that day about everything and nothing. Emily found herself laughing at the little things again, remembering how it felt to be carefree. Her mother's words were a reminder of who she was, who she had always been before the business world had swallowed her whole. "You're doing great, sweetheart," her mom said, her voice filled with pride. "But remember to take care of yourself too." The weeks that followed brought a new sense of purpose and clarity to Emily's life. She began setting boundaries at work, taking time for herself on the weekends, and engaging in activities she had long neglected. Whether it was spending time at the local cafe, reading a book, or simply enjoying a walk in the park, she learned to appreciate the small moments again. At work, she found herself thriving in a way she hadn't before. The pressure was still there, of course, but now it felt manageable. Travis noticed the change in her, too. She was more present, more engaged, and even more confident in her decisions. But the biggest change was in her outlook on life. She no longer felt the need to prove herself at every turn. She understood that success wasn't about doing everything perfectly. It was about doing the best you could while maintaining balance in your life. Months later, Travis called Emily into his office. He had been watching her progress closely, and he had an important decision to make. The company was about to embark on a major project, and he needed someone to take the lead. He had many capable people on his team, but there was one person he knew could handle the responsibility: Emily. "Emily," he said, his voice serious but filled with admiration. "I've watched you grow in ways I didn't expect. You've shown leadership, insight, and a remarkable ability to adapt under pressure. I want you to lead the next big project at Carter Enterprises." Emily stared at him, surprised. She had come so far since that first day at the company, but she never imagined this moment would come so soon. "Are you sure I'm ready for this?" she asked, her voice tentative. Travis smiled. "You're more than ready. You've proven yourself time and time again, and I have no doubt you'll continue to exceed expectations." Though Emily had come a long way, life at Carter Enterprises was far from easy. The big project she had been entrusted with loomed over her like a mountain, its complexities and demands constantly pushing her to the limit. Despite the newfound sense of balance she had fought so hard to find, there was still an underlying tension in her life, one that she couldn't shake. One evening, as she worked late in the office once again, Emily found herself lost in thought as the glow of her computer screen illuminated the dimly lit office. She could hear the faint sound of the city below, the soft hum of traffic, and the distant echoes of people living their lives outside her bubble of deadlines and meetings. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Travis. "You're doing great, Emily, but don't forget to take care of yourself. This is your project, but I need you to remember that it's okay to take a step back." The message was meant to reassure her, but it had the opposite effect. It was a reminder that, even though Travis trusted her, she still had to prove herself in ways that felt increasingly impossible. For the past few weeks, Emily had been questioning her choices. She had built this life from the ground up, but now that she had it, she wasn't sure if it was the life she wanted. The long hours, the constant pressure, the expectations, was it all worth it? She had fought for success, but was she truly happy? As she stared at her reflection in the darkened window, a wave of doubt washed over her. Was this really the life she had imagined? One morning, a meeting was scheduled with one of the company's largest stakeholders, and Emily was tasked with presenting a crucial aspect of the new project. It was a high-pressure situation, one that could make or break her career at Carter Enterprises. She arrived early, reviewing the documents one last time before the meeting began. Travis was already in the conference room, preparing for the presentation. He gave her a reassuring smile as she walked in, but the tension was palpable in the air. The meeting began smoothly, with Emily presenting the project's progress and detailing the financial projections. But as the conversation shifted to the next phase of the project, things started to unravel. One of the stakeholders, a sharp and vocal woman named Victoria Hayes, challenged Emily's numbers. "This doesn't add up," Victoria said, her voice cold and direct. "You're presenting inflated projections that don't align with the current market trends. If you want our continued investment, you better give us something more solid than this." Emily felt her heart race. She had anticipated tough questions, but not this level of scrutiny. The room fell into a tense silence as Victoria stared at her, waiting for a response. Travis, who had been sitting back, leaned forward slightly, his eyes on Emily. For a moment, Emily froze. She had prepared for everything except this. The doubt, the pressure, the fear, it all came rushing back. Her mind went blank. The carefully rehearsed numbers, the arguments she had planned, all of it slipped away in an instant. What do I do? She could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on her, and it was like the room was closing in. The stakes were high, and the world she had worked so hard to build felt like it was crumbling around her. In that moment of overwhelming pressure, something inside Emily clicked. She had always prided herself on seeing the details that others missed, the small, seemingly insignificant things that could make all the difference. But she had never learned how to deal with the big moments, the moments that could break or make her. "I'm not the same person I was when I walked into this room," she realized. "I can't back down now." She took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. She met Victoria's gaze, refusing to look away. "You're right," she said, her voice steady but firm. "These projections are based on a very specific market analysis, but I agree that we need a more robust strategy to account for current trends. I'll go back to the drawing board, revise the projections, and bring you something that not only aligns with the market, but positions us for the next phase of growth." Victoria raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed by Emily's response. The other stakeholders murmured in agreement, some nodding. Travis gave her a subtle, approving smile. Emily wasn't sure where the sudden surge of confidence came from, but it was enough to steer the conversation back on track. The rest of the meeting went smoothly, and when it was over, Emily felt a strange mix of relief and exhilaration. She had stood her ground. That night, after the meeting, Emily found herself at the same cafe she had visited on the weekends before her world had changed. She needed time to think, to breathe, and to ground herself again. She ordered a coffee and sat by the window, watching the rain pour down in sheets. As she sipped her drink, she reflected on everything that had led her here. The pressure, the success, the sacrifices, it was all starting to feel like a game she wasn't sure she wanted to keep playing. She had been chasing something she thought was success, but now she wasn't sure it was worth it. She pulled out her phone and looked at her mother's message from earlier that day. You know, sweetie, sometimes we think success is about climbing the ladder, but what if we're meant to build a new one instead? Emily smiled softly, her heart lifting slightly at the thought of her mother's wisdom. Perhaps it was time to rethink her own ladder. Maybe it was time to create her own path, one that didn't require sacrificing everything for success. The next morning, Emily walked into the office with a renewed sense of clarity. She had made a decision, one that would change everything. She walked straight to Travis's office. "Travis," she began, her voice calm and resolute. "I need to talk to you." He looked up from his desk, surprised. "Of course, Emily. What's on your mind?" "I've been thinking a lot about my role here," she said. "And I've realized that while I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had, I need to take a step back. I want to be part of the company, but I need to find a way to contribute in a way that aligns with my values, my well-being." Travis's brow furrowed slightly, but he didn't interrupt. He knew that Emily had been under immense pressure, and he had seen her grow in ways few could. He also knew she was making a decision that was just as much about who she was becoming as it was about her career. "I understand," Travis said after a pause. "But I don't want you to feel like you have to leave. We can find a way to make this work for both you and the company." Emily smiled, feeling a sense of relief. "I'm not leaving," she said. "I just need to carve out a role that's more balanced, something that allows me to still contribute but not lose sight of what really matters." Travis nodded. "I'll support you no matter what you choose, Emily. You've earned that." Emily's decision marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life. She took on a more flexible role within Carter Enterprises, one that allowed her to lead important projects while maintaining her mental and emotional well-being. It wasn't always easy, but it was hers. And for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was truly in control of her life. She had found a way to succeed on her own terms, one where success wasn't defined by the size of her office or the amount of money she made, but by the peace she had found within herself. As she sat at her desk in the company's offices one morning, watching the city come to life outside, Emily realized that she had built a life worth living, not one defined by external pressures, but by her own values and choices. She had learned that success wasn't just about climbing to the top, it was about finding balance, embracing vulnerability, and knowing when to stand strong and when to let go. The journey wasn't over, but it had finally become one she could walk with confidence.